all for joining us on our fourth webinar around leading and selling in a time of social distancing. We're all in a situation right now where we're all full of it. There's challenges, there's opportunities, and everything in between. So what Keith and I want to do on this webinar is continue with what we've done over the last couple of weeks. And we'll talk about how we're going to continue this with next week, and we'll talk about that topic very, very shortly. Today, the agenda, we're going to talk about management and sales metrics. And we're going to go through some very tactical tools at a very high level, and we're going to share these tools with you. We've shared several tools on the previous webinar, and these tools are very, again, tactical, meant to be used in your business right away. And again, we'll get to those tools at a high level. Our first breakout to get things going will be how COVID-19 has affected you, your company, your family, just to kind of level set and get us going around the topics. Please be vulnerable in these breakouts. We've received a lot of good feedback on these breakouts about what they mean to you, and sharing and networking with each other. So please be as vulnerable as possible. Introduce yourself on the first breakout. We'll keep the same people in each breakout as we go through. What should be tracked? Well, we're going to talk about in this day and age, we're going to go through some tools and then make some recommendations, and then allow all of you to talk in your groups about what you should be tracking, what should be different, and how you can get ahead. So when you think, when this is over, what are some different things that you may want to put in place? And what do you want to put in place today in anticipation of this being over? How will it be tracked? How will you use it? Who will see it? And you'll have a breakout session around that. And lastly, more of that personal, you Inc. What's going on with you? What's going on with your family? And just sharing, talking, and building some camaraderie with your group. Now, so a couple things to think about, and you'll see this slide actually a couple of times, because right now it's really about building relationships, and it's for mutual gain for yourself and for other people. Givers gain at this point. Build social capital by giving and listening first. As Linda talked about on our last webinar, listening is an art form, and it's a mixture between art and science. We have to be able to be excellent listeners, because it's very, very, very hard to be a good listener. We all know that, because a lot of times we have so much good stuff to say, it's hard to focus on what we need to listen to. Build relationships by staying connected. Right now, there's so many different vehicles for staying connected. There's methods like this where we're all connected on a call like this, on a Zoom call like this. There are ways of using LinkedIn, different types of social media, FaceTime. Stay connected. We had our first family Zoom with my parents the other night. Once we got through the first 15 minutes of trying to make everything work, it was very entertaining. And just a lot of good dad jokes from my dad. Gave him a great platform for that, so I know that was good. Just find different ways to stay connected. Build authority and add value, and lastly, build intimacy by opening up, being vulnerable and personal. And again, we'll give you a platform to do that on this call, on this webinar. So our first breakout: how has the coronavirus affected you, your company, and your industry? I know there's a lot there. There's a lot there. But we're just going to ask you to briefly describe what are some of the big challenges, some of them very obvious to each company, and then talk about what kind of success stories have you seen? What type of relationship building? What type of risen to the occasion during this? So take about 8 minutes in this breakout, introduce yourself, and talk about how this is affecting you, your company, as a foundation for where we're going to go. So I'm going to set the breakup now. Just give me a second. All right, welcome back, everybody. So right now, you talked about how this is affecting you, your company, your industry, setting the stage with where we're going to go next. So thank you for doing that. We have 3 more breakouts as we go through this. Now, a couple of things to think about. We talked about this on our last webinar, and it's really about revising your behaviors, pressing pause on everything we're used to, as we talked about before, those that were on the previous webinars. New behaviors, getting used to, versus putting our heads in the sand right now, with the right mindset, the right messaging, not ignoring the pandemic, but really understanding, having compassion, and having conversations. Now, we talked about care for your clients. Again, those that were on the previous webinar, our clients that are keep accounts, ones that have been with us for years or a shorter period of time that we obviously want to keep and maintain. Attain accounts are ones that we will be going are the ones who haven't worked with us yet, and our prospects that we want to attract to our business. Recapture people we've worked with in the past, companies in the past, and expand our current accounts that once we get through this, obviously we want to be able to expand. And while we're going through this, them knowing what we can do for them and understanding that there's some benefit, mutual benefit there. So what we want to talk about again is things that we can control. And the only thing that we can control are our behaviors. There's a lot of different things that can get into our heads and focusing on results, but we have to think about behaviors. So we're first going to talk about management tactics. So we're going to cover some management tools at a very, very high level. And then we're going to talk about some sales tools. And Keith Daw is going to go into more detail on a couple of those tools. And then we're going to have a breakout around what types of things you can or should or want to implement in your business. All of the tools that we're getting ready to go through are going to be sent to you. They're writable PDFs. They're very tactical, and they're designed to be implemented right away. We're going to share these tools with everybody. So the first one. Now this one is a management behavior gap tool. So those of you that lead other people, you lead other people no matter what roles that they're in. This is something you can look at for yourself as where you are today and your action plan for where you want to be tomorrow, next week, and then when COVID-19 is over, if you will. So we're not going to go through everything on here, but as you see, there's all these different behaviors. Getting your, as a leader, if you're a leader, getting your manager, your direct report involved as well is important. If you don't have anyone that you report to, then you're self-managing this. So you think about life cycle, recruiting, hiring, and turnover. Where do you rank yourself now? Where does your manager see them? Again, if it's yourself, where do you see yourself? Where do you want to be? Setting goals, coaching. We'll talk more about coaching in a little bit. Time management, managing organizational change. Again, thinking about where you are today, where you want to be, where your leader thinks you should be. Again, if you report to somebody, and your action plan. Writable PDFs to really think about what those things should be. Again, this is a very high level overview. The next one, more specific for all the leaders on the call today. And what I mean by that is you think about your team, your remote team that's out there. A sample manager's cookbook. A cookbook is really following a recipe. Anyone can typically follow a recipe and cook something on their stove. And if you follow the instructions, it should come out fairly decent with minor exceptions. In leadership and sales, it's the same principle. So you see different samples over here. How many times do I want to role play with my team members? What if I set up a FaceTime call or a Zoom call with one of my team members and said, you know what, I know we're really in a situation right now where going out and seeing people is virtually impossible. Why don't you role play with me an upcoming meeting or a meeting we want to have? Let's practice. Let's go to the driving range. Let's work through this. WIMs, weekly individual meetings, which we'll talk to. Business books read. What type of books have you been putting off that you haven't had time to read that you want to be able to read? Make it a goal around that. So what you'll do with this, all the leaders on the call, is you think about what's your cookbook. What are the different things that you want to be able to do as far as metrics and hold yourself accountable to today and after COVID-19. So that's really management cookbook creator. The next one, I know there's a lot on here and it may be difficult to see. Again, we're going to send you all these tactical tools for you to be able to use in your business. This is really from a standpoint of what are these behavioral gaps? As I look at my team, say if I have salespeople out there, what types of behaviors should I expect them to be doing on their behaviors? Are they reaching out and making touch calls? Where do they see themselves? How do they rank themselves on a scale of 1 to 10? Where do I rank them? Where should they be in the future? And what's the action plan? Be more engaged on LinkedIn, perhaps. Reaching out to people you haven't reached out to in a long time with the mindset of, hey, obviously we can't see each other right now. Just calling to check in to see how you were doing as we migrate through this craziness. Those are action plans. Building relationships, making presentations, that's different. It's very different. Speaking to clients and network partners over the last several days and last week, there's presentations that are made over a medium like this these days. How are you doing that? What does that look like? Again, I'm not going to cover all of these, but it's really for you to use as a leader, for all the leaders on the call, with team members that report to you. How do they see themselves today? How do you see themselves today? And more importantly, thinking about when we get out of this and when we get through this, which we will, what does that action plan look like? So we're not waiting till we're through COVID-19 to put things in place. And then lastly, on the leadership side, very straightforward, weekly individual meetings builder. Again, these are all writable PDFs we're going to send to you. Monday call with your team members. What do you want to achieve this week? What are your goals? What do you want to achieve? What does that look like? Friday, what did you achieve this week? What help do you need from me this week and or next week? So there's a Monday morning check-in, Friday afternoon, or whatever time on Friday, check out, and what do you need from me? Very, very straightforward and simplistic, if you will, at its general form. Now, so those are the management tactics, different examples of metrics that you can hold yourself accountable to. Now we're going to touch on sales, and then we're going to go into a breakout so you all can talk about this together. On the sales side, again, I know it might be hard to see some of the writing. We're going to send you all these tools. This is an ideal company profiler. And this breaks down, again, what better time working remotely to think about this. What does your ideal company look like? What is your average sales cycle in your business? Is it a week? Is it a month? Is it 6 months? Look back at previous sales. How long did it take you from first call to the close, and have an average around that? What is your average sales now? How many products or services do you sell on each transaction? So, do I sell the CEOs? Do I sell the heads of IT? What does that look like? How do I get there? What's my prospecting method? Is it through LinkedIn? Is it through warm calls? Is it through asking for introductions, networking? Ideal size of company, location. Are they currently using other vendors, or are they doing whatever it is they're doing themselves versus using someone like you? What are their pain indicators? Meaning that what are the different things in their business that they're struggling with, frustrated by, that are not allowing them to perhaps be as efficient and effective as possible? And then any marketer industry triggers. So it gives you a chance right now to think about what's the ideal type of company that I want to work with. And perhaps those could go into your attain bucket as you think about where you're heading as we migrate through this. Next, these are different prospecting activities. And I'm going to ask Keith to talk about this. So Keith, can you unmute yourself and talk through these next two tools, please?
Absolutely, absolutely. And good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And then I know it's a little, Chris, you had a little glitch in the audio there, so I'm going to recap some of it.
Oh.
Right now, in one of the previous webinars we mentioned, we don't want to seem opportunistic, we don't want to seem insensitive, but we all know that there needs to be revenue brought into the company personally or for our team, for the company. And so what we want to be able to do is make you be very focused, or make sure that your team is focused on, if you're going to reach out to somebody and if you are going to check in on them, doing so through all your LinkedIn connections and social selling, make sure you're putting time on your calendar specifically to go ahead and reach out. You know, hey, Joe, how are you doing? How's the team doing through all this craziness? And genuinely reach out and care for them and connect with them. At the same time, if you have thousands of LinkedIn connections and you know what that ideal prospect or someone who could get you in front of that ideal prospect, maybe start with some of those individuals, so the hellos might start a conversation that might lead into. I've heard a lot of people right now, nobody wants to make a change, but if the person or the company that they're currently using is kind of screwing the deal up right now, it's a great opportunity for you to gently be curious, start a conversation, and maybe there is something that you can do now, or at least you can identify an opportunity to work with them later. So that's why that ideal prospect is, if you know what you're looking for, it helps you understand how to, which of these prospecting activities. That cold call may not be your typical 30-second pitch that you love to do. It might genuinely be reaching out and saying, "Hey, Sue, it's been a while. How are things working with you and the team, and how are you adjusting to the remote thing?" Or networking, to be able to go ahead and interact in settings like this. I've got a virtual networking event we're going to be doing April 15th. You all get some information on that. How do we go ahead and make the most of these different times, and make sure you're looking for those events that are going to put you in front of people to have the right type of conversation. And then right here, kind of, so looking back at the ideal part, look, if I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to one person, Keith, I'd love to talk to somebody like this in this kind of company, because here's the kind of things that I'm hearing going on. It makes it very easy for me and others in your breakout session to interact. And then thinking about the tactical before we jump into the breakout session, write down what those things are. Am I reaching out via LinkedIn or email, or am I inviting somebody to a webinar my company is hosting? So give yourself a goal. And if you want to, not to burden yourself, but have a little fun, have some competition. Hey, I'm going to send out 50 messages to people I care about today. Okay. But then actually block off time on your calendar to make sure you can do it, give you some guidelines, not super structured, but give you some guidelines to keep you on track, shiny objects. And then at the same time, at the end of the day, go in there and see how many actually did you do? Because that's a way for you to say, was it a crazy goal? Or did I just get distracted? Or did I not know what I needed to do? And I think it's a good way for you to start to adjust and find that balance between the work and life all now in one spot. And then at the same time, maybe a little reflection on some of the results, because we all need to have those little successes. Hey, I talked to Jim and Jeff and Susie, and it was a great conversation. I'm going to make some intros on their behalf. And that's what we're looking to give you some structure for now. But this obviously will work out for you much more effectively down the road as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Keith. And so what we want to think about right now is, again, we just went through at a very high level 4 different leadership management tactical tools around Cookbook, around behaviors, things that you can or should be doing today. Sales, different types of behaviors, from the right messaging, keeping in touch with your network, reaching out to your customers, embracing your customers. I know that is a very high level that we just went through. Now what we want you to do is think about, in your breakout groups, what metrics should you put in place? It could be some of the things we just talked about. It could be some of the things you're doing currently. Share what you're looking at. Share what you're considering. And then the next breakout, we'll talk more about the how. So the next 8 to 10 minutes, what metrics should you put in place right now? All right, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully my audio is fine. I'm sorry I did not see the message before. Hopefully the audio is good. And I also decided to switch my location. Why not? I went to a little more tropical place for a little bit. So what the heck? All right. Now, what we're going to talk about now is coaching. Now, from a standpoint of coaching, there are several different things that come to mind. And one thing is, sometimes we feel that there's not enough time to coach. We're talking about, what are we going to put in place as leaders? What do we want to put in place as an individual in my business? Because these leadership tools can be used individually for an individual business owner or a salesperson. So it goes all over. This is a tool that we use with our leaders that we work with. It's called a rapid coaching process. And we're going to send this out to everybody. It's very, very basic, and it can be around anything. You can use this at home for anything. Your problem statement, you would state that problem to your partner, whoever that is. It could be something you're struggling with organizing your day. It could be you're struggling with how to reach out to people with the right mindset. The other person, whoever that is, if that's someone on this call or someone you work with or someone in your household, they're going to ask questions for 2 minutes. Just to clarify, it's very structured, 2 minutes of questions. That all is asking questions without solving the problem. Because sometimes it's just, instead of ready, aim, fire, it's just ready, fire. So the other person, that coach, is going to ask questions to clarify the problem. Once those questions are answered, then there's advice. And that advice is at that point, when that advice is heard, that other person realizes that other person heard them and understood them. Then we're more willing to take coaching advice. So for the leaders on the call, just keep in mind, before you coach somebody, make sure you understand their problem. Make sure you ask questions to clarify what that problem is so they know that they've heard you and understood you, then offer that advice. So again, we'll send this out to everybody. It takes just 5 minutes, 5-6 minutes. And it's amazing what kind of results you get from it when someone else listens and gives advice. Now, we're going to go right back into a breakout. And this breakout is around the how. You might have already started to talk about this, but this is around the how. How do I put these in place? Let's just say that when we send out these tools at the end of the day today or tomorrow morning at the latest, because we're going to send the video out as well of this recording once it's edited. How are you going to put these in place? What types of conversations are you going to have with yourself, with your team members, others involved? What does that look like? Are you going to gather your team together? Are you going to take any action? Are you deciding to wait? What does that mean for you around the how? So next breakout, please jump into that and talk about the how, please. All right. Now, so you started talking about the how. And it's obviously a lot to talk about as you think about that. Everyone has different opinions of that, and everyone has different ways of making those things work. So thank you very much for sharing. When you think about these different things as far as metrics and the how, one of the things that Keith and I wanted to mention to the group, we'll mention this when we close out, is inviting everyone to crash a class, if you will, complimentary. Next Friday, the 10th, we're having our normal leadership session. And it's really around a lot of these topics in a more deeper level. So we'll send that as part of the follow-up after this webinar in the next couple of days, and you'll see that. Now, the next thing we want to talk about is all about you Inc., you Incorporated. And I want you to think about this, and Keith and I want you to think about this from how you are. Those that are on the previous webinar, we want you to really think about, again, think about vulnerability here. Think about your family. Think about how you're doing. Are you feeling isolated? What are you doing to create some sort of excitement? How are you having fun? It is so easy right now because this apex and everything we're dealing with in the coming weeks, it's going to get tough. We know that. It's going to get very, very, very challenging. We are certainly not out of the woods. So when you think about that, what can you do with your family? The other night or last weekend, we pulled out the Nintendo Wii game. And I am a little embarrassed to say that we were playing tennis. My arm hurt the next day from playing Wii tennis. Haven't played in a while, but that was fun. So what are you doing? How are you doing? What are you doing to cope with this? Be as vulnerable as you can with your group. Talk about your family. Talk about yourself. This is our last breakout, then we'll come back in and we'll wrap this up. Welcome back, everybody. I really don't like cutting those conversations off. We need to be good stewards of time. I apologize, we're going a little bit over. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing how you're doing. There's a lot of comfort to hearing other people talk about that. And there's obviously, as we all work through these challenges. So it's very, very important to understand that this intimacy is about opening up, being personal, and that doesn't come natural for everybody. It's hard, especially in this day and age, as we know more and more people that are affected by everything going on. So as we close out, again, Keith and I and our whole team want to thank you very, very, very much for attending. We will send more information out. Again, crash a class, complimentary. Any leader on the call that wants to attend on April the 10th, please do so. We have free resources at the cell link that we'll send out as well. And again, we thank you very much, thinking about all of you and all of your families as we go through this. Last but not least, our 5th webinar will be next Thursday, and it's going to be around dealing with difficult situations, dealing with difficult people, dealing with different emotions, internal and external. And it's really for anybody to join, leaders, salespeople, customer service. And it's really about dealing with difficult situations and how we keep our emotions in check and how we deal with other emotions. Thank you all very, very much. Look forward to speaking with you soon. Thank you. Have a great day.
Helping to drive the needle in addition to the RM.
Thank you.
Reaching out to
Thank you, everybody.
either they
Thank
know
you.
or have vehicles that,
Thanks, Chris.
you know, have
Thanks,
That was
Keith.
great.
Have a good one.
About being wrapped because the RMs,
Thanks, Chris.
their lists are small enough at this point that they should